We've got the Hop Rising double IPA.
Oh yeah, that's the one we drank that night.
Yeah, it's strong. Dipper.
Do it. And let the English see you do
Your Scottish accent's better than Mel Gibson's.
it. I've just practiced that particular phrase a lot.
Get your kilt lifter.
Oh boy.
Oh, I added Wellington to the big league player discussion just to touch on how well he's hitting.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of which, I want to have that pulled up.
Yeah, I'm still.
Yeah, good idea because that's pretty important.
It's kind of funny. I was just kind of thinking how like the guys who are on the bubble seem to be, or at least, I mean, I guess Travis Wood's been better than he has been, but not great. But then Olt's been pretty good,
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
Wellington, and those are the guys that are running out of space.
Yep.
Although now, who knows what's going to happen with Wood because of the other injuries.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Was the game on today? TV?
I don't think so.
I think it's just a radio. No, it was on TV. It was. Because
Really?
I recorded it.
Oh, I didn't
Oh,
watch it today.
yeah, I didn't either. I was busy all day.
Me too. Yeah, I was gonna watch it at some point tonight, maybe. But
It's also kind of worth mentioning
Excuse me.
Caesar.
Mm-hmm. Hawkeyes are getting rolled.
Rick rolled. I don't know what that means.
Getting rolled. Beat. Whooped up.
Well, I know rolled, but have you ever heard anybody say Rick rolled?
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's. You don't know what Rickrolled is?
No, we don't
It's
live.
when you get. It's when you get tricked into the Oh, here, let me show you an example. How's your guys' internet speed tonight?
I don't
Mine
know.
hasn't been good.
Yeah, mine's not good at all.
It should be okay.
I saw Danny Rockett's gallery from the B game. It was making me laugh again about how he took a picture of that dude that was sitting behind us, Corey. Remember
Yeah.
how you had headphones on and stuff and kind of looked like
Right, right.
what's his face?
Bartman.
Yes, Steve Bartman.
Okay, so I was trying to find a video and I can't find one right now, but basically it's like where you get like lured into watching something and then it cuts away to that Rick Astley song, Never Gonna Give You Up.
What?
So like, yeah,
That's not
Never
real.
Gonna Give You Up, Let You Down. What's
That's
that?
crazy.
I said that's
Sounds
not
fake.
real.
That's the Urban Dictionary version of it, probably.
No? Here we
How
go.
would you spell Rick rolled?
So like, here's an example. Like I'm gonna
That's-
post it in there.
He speaks the truth.
Are you putting it in the chat?
Yeah, so it's like it would be like it's like this.
It's like this. Bringvictory.com.
I don't know if I want to click on that. That looks suspicious.
my Google blocked it and said, "Do you really want to run this?" Rick rolled.
Did you click on it?
I did, but I didn't play the video
Oh.
because my Adobe Flash wouldn't play it.
Oh.
This is a real thing
Yes.
to trick somebody into watching a Rick Astley video.
Yeah.
Because
I
I've
can't
heard
believe you've
Rick
never
rolled
heard-
before, but I didn't. What?
Awesome.
We're gonna be like Rick rolling each other all week.
So like you sending the link would be Rick
I
rolling.
mean, yeah,
like
I
you
mean,
Rick rolled us because we
Right.
clicked on it.
right.
Got it.
That link isn't really working. But
No. Andy, you know what else is real?
what?
This thing right here.
These.
Oh jeez.
Right here. Oh yeah, here it is.
Oh
Is
my
that your
God.
Colorado purchase?
No.
I can't see what it is. Your
It gets really
quality
pixelated
is-
and blurred when it gets up
is
close.
Sketchy.
How about that right
is it
there?
like an e-cigarette or is it a pen?
It's an e-cigarette.
Corey wishes it were a pen.
I know. I'm gonna work on it. I've been holding it all day,
What?
like doing air math.
No way. While you were registering kids for baseball? Were
Is
you?
it for realsies an e-cigarette? Or is it some sort of like?
No, it's an e-cigarette. They were giving them away at one of the bars we went to.
Oh, it's not some like electronic Mary Jane.
No. Come on, Kurt.
Well, you guys went through Colorado. I didn't know.
We can tell you that story some other time.
It's a different story. That's an off-the-air story. Oh, I don't have a memory or sound card. Hold on.
As a side note, Durango, Colorado is awesome.
I've never been.
That's where the Ska Brewing Company is.
Oh yeah, I saw you checked something in there. That's when I texted you. When I saw that, I texted you and were like, "Are you guys stopping or are you?"
Yeah, we stopped there to eat dinner.
Yeah.
We went to this place called the Irish Embassy to eat dinner. It was just like it was just a Irish pub.
Cool.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a brutal drive,
Yeah.
especially when you guys took theirs. It took a lot longer on the way back.
Yeah, if we hadn't tried to go to that Four Corners, we would have been back 3 or 4 hours sooner,
Mm-hmm.
as it turns out.
Oh well.
Man.
Such is life.
Yeah.
All right, I think I'm ready if you guys are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
I can't.
Maybe we better do a sound test real quick.
Yeah. How was setting up that studio?
It was not fun because I just finished it
Oh,
Mm.
not that long ago. I kind of forgot about it. Did the baseball and softball stuff today, and then
Oh, something just made a
that was
weird
Andy,
noise.
I think.
that was me.
All right, when do you guys want to talk?
Hello, it's Andy. What's up?
Yeah. Check, check.
I'm getting the froggy throat thing again now that we're
Keeping
about
it
to
down.
record something.
Oh man! All right, here we go.
You see my sweet ass hat?
Yeah, I did see that.
Oh, nice.
Did Augie win?
No, they lost.
Oh, bummer.
They kind of got crushed.
Really?
Yeah, blown out. Yeah, like 20, I think.
Oh, that sucks.
But
Oh,
the
well, they
good
got the
news is
championship.
for them is the 4 starters are all juniors, so they're going to be heavily favored next year going into the season.
Nice. I should
That's
know
kind
that
of-
as a graduate,
know.
but I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Hi, this is Sean O'Hare from. Hi, this is Sean O'Hare from Clear Lake, Iowa, and this episode is brought to you by IVNV Patreon supporters like me. Learn more at patreon.com/IVNV. Next!
The IVMV spring training trip is over, and on this episode, we're going to talk about some of the biggest stories coming out of Mesa right now. The Chris Bryant Whoops.
What happened?
Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
Something happened to my notes.
You're nuts?
Yeah. All right, here we go.
Hi, this is Sean O'Hare from Clear Lake, Iowa. And this episode is brought to you by IVNV Patreon supporters like me. Learn more at patreon.com/IVNV. Next!
The IVMV spring training trip is over, and on this episode we're going to talk about some of the biggest stories coming out of Mesa right now, including the Chris Bryant call-up situation. We will share what we saw during the 6 games in 5 days while at spring training. It is March 22nd, 2015, and you're listening to the 303rd episode of the IVNV podcast. Hi, and thanks for downloading this week's episode of the IVMV podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Corey, and I am joined by the other 2 hosts of this podcast through a Google Plus Hangout.
Hey, it's Andy.
Yeah, and Kurt.
Before we get started here with Cubs Talk, there's a couple of events that we want to tell you about. First off, we are doing a meetup for opening night. So if you are in West Central Illinois, the Quad Cities, Galesburg, Peoria, any of the surrounding areas, we are meeting at the infamous Duffy's in Galesburg. You guys are kind of, I in a way, that's kind of my home court, and so I would feel better if you guys would explain Duffy's to anybody that hasn't heard us talk about it before.
Oh man, I'm not sure I can explain it without offending somebody. But it's your kind of, I guess you could call Galesburg a small town, even though I guess by Midwest standards it's not too small, but it's like a small town towny bar that is very authentically Cubs backers, and you know they're blue collar workers. They're getting off their shift and coming to the bar, or perhaps they're mid shift. I don't know.
A lot of railroad workers.
Yeah, they're hardworking folk that are Cubs fans, and they're a lot of fun to watch games with. But anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah, so the game starts at 7 or 7:30 opening night. We'll try to get there early. Duffy's does fill up fast. For regular Cubs games, there at Duffy's, you're kind of I think you explained it well, Kurt. I would also I would describe them maybe as the down and out Cubs fans. But on nights like this, like opening night, it will be packed to the gills. Last year I went.
It is Easter, isn't it? Opening night.
It is. So there will be the regulars.
Not that they're worried about that, but.
I went, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe last year. I can't remember. Might have been last year. I went on opening day, and they had free food, but it was hot dogs that was made by made by a man with a very large beard, cooking hot dogs on a George Foreman grill. So.
That sums up Duffy's better than my explanation. Hot dogs on a George Foreman.
Yeah.
Duffy's.
But it's a really fun environment, and opening day last year it was just packed, and it'll be even more packed this year with, I guess, it's kind of playoff. I think that it will be like playoff type excitement that night, especially because the Cubs are playing the Cardinals. There's a lot more interest in the Cubs right now, I think, and a lot more hype. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Andy, you're coming down for it, right?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah.
Beth and I should both be there, I think.
Nice, but Kurt, it's not in the cards for you.
As usual, yeah, I won't be there. It's about a 2-hour drive for me, so it'd be hard.
Yeah, so these people, that come to our live events and never see you, probably have to wonder. there's a few things they
It's just
probably need to
it's
wonder
just
about
the
you.
yeah, well, but it's the timing of the this is not my year to be the most participant member of this crew. So
Yeah, understandable. Although one event that you will be attending is the our bus trip from the Quad Cities up to the Cubs Giants game on August 8th. We are renting a charter bus for the day, so you can avoid the driving, the parking, and all the headaches of going to a Cubs game by going on our bus trip with us. If you live between Chicago and the Quad Cities, I've had a few people ask about this. And you don't want to drive to the Quad Cities to start and end the day, we will be making a pit stop. All right, hold on a second. Okay, I'm going to have an edit there. Sorry. If you live between Chicago and the Quad Cities and you don't want to drive to the Quad Cities to start and end the day, we will be making a pit stop at the DeKalb Oasis, and you can get on and off the bus there. But tickets are $125. That includes the bus ride and your infield reserve ticket for the game. It's real nice. We'll be underneath the overhang, so in the shade, which is important in August. And we have a listener from Florida. Ryan is flying up for the bus trip. And in past years, it's been a lot of people from around the Quad Cities that we know, people we work with, our friends and stuff. But there's a lot more podcast listeners on the bus this year, so that'll be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to that. And you can buy your seat for the bus trip at ivmv.com/bus. And if you have any questions about the bus trip, you can email me, Corey, Corey, at ivmv.com. And we have a new meetup plan to share with you on this episode. We are hosting a meetup at an Iowa Cubs game, and that will be on June 13th. That's a Saturday. And we will share more details on that meetup in the future. But, yeah, it's June 13th there in Des Moines, Iowa, and if you want to get it on your calendar. Last year we rented a suite for the Iowa Cubs meetup. It was fun, but I think it was a little pricey.
yeah,
So
we'll be
this year,
amongst the regulars this year.
right? This year we're just going general admission, so it'll be cheap. So yeah, bring the family. Yeah, it's going to be fun. We did put out a few extra episodes this week. I'm sure you realized that, but if you're just finding our podcast, in the last week we did an interview with Tim Sheridan, who is the public address announcer for the Cubs spring training games at Sloan Park. And then we also did an interview with Mick Gillespie, who is the voice of the Tennessee Smokies, and then he also does the Cubs.com broadcasts of Cubs spring training games. So if you haven't listened to those, check them out. I thought they were both really interesting conversations.
Yeah, it was nice to listen to those as like a, not being a part of it and just sort of listening as a fan. Yeah, both were great. And Tim, of course, we've talked to Tim every year, so he's amazing. But it was nice to hear a new addition in the interview lineup with Mick. So good work out there.
Yeah, thanks. Well, and I listened to the Mick one I think yesterday on our drive, and this last week was such a blur. Like even the questions that we asked in the interview caught me off guard as I was listening to it. So I was like, "Oh yeah, that was a good question." Also, on last week's episode, which was number 300, we talked about the changes and improvements that are coming to IVMV. We have an iOS app coming, hopefully by opening night. That's we're really hoping for that. And we also shared that we will be doing 2 episodes a week once the Cubs season starts. Of course, our Sunday night regular one, but then we will have one that we're releasing late on Wednesday evenings. And then I also shared that I'll be doing a new podcast under the IVMV umbrella. However, as I listened back to the episode, I didn't even call the new podcast by the right name. So I will, again, blame it on the lack of sleep, as we had just driven 26 hours across the country the day before. But the podcast is called the Daily Northside Recap. I think I said review or something. I don't even remember what I said. Report, I think I said. But it's the Daily Northside Recap. And in that daily podcast, which starts April 6th, I will be recapping the previous day's Cubs game and then the games of all of the minor league teams in the Cubs organization from South Bend to the Iowa Cubs. If you're wondering why I decided to cut it off at South Bend and leave Eugene out of it, it's because they're 2 hours behind us on the West Coast, and I will be recording these late at night after all the games have finished, and it'd be rough to have to stay up every night and wait for a short season, low A short season Eugene game to finish. So these will be coming out on weekday mornings, and you can get caught up with all the previous day's games in the Cubs organization on your drive to work. Again, that's the Daily Northside Recap, and it's right now it's available on iTunes and Stitcher, and then also at ivnv.com/daily. And then right now there's just one like introductory episode, and then the regular episodes will start up on April 6th. And that is a separate podcast, so those will not show up in the feed for this podcast. So if you don't want them, they won't be there. And if you do want them, you'll need to subscribe to that podcast. And then also, we'd like to thank all of you that jumped on board with our Patreon campaign after hearing what types of things the financial support of this podcast will result in. And I'll get to that more later, but if you feel like we're providing you a service that is worth supporting financially, you can go to patreon.com/IvyEnvy. So let's talk Cubs baseball, and let's start off with the drama. Because everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, well, and I do. We predicted that this would happen, I think, and that's not a bold prediction because it was obvious. But Scott Boras has opened his mouth, as he's prone to do, about the Chris Bryant situation, and he's doing his job. So he's annoying, but I guess you can't blame him. But what he kind of said is that the Cubs' commitment to winning, he's questioning that. And here's the exact quote at the end of his little interview rant was, this isn't a system choice. This isn't a mandate. This is a flat ownership decision. Do they really want to win here? So he's calling out the Ricketts on whether or not they want to win. And I think, interestingly, Theo's response to it was, kind of just basically to telling him to shut up. But he said Chris Bryant's development path has absolutely nothing to do with ownership, period. As with all our baseball decisions, I will determine where Chris begins the 2015 season after consulting with members of our baseball operations staff. Comments from agents, media members, and anybody outside our organization will be ignored. So that was Theo's response. And it was a good one. I think he's just telling people just calm down. I mean, this is all just sort of posturing for future contract money and all that kind of stuff. And I think one of the most interesting tweets to come out of it, or probably the most, accurate, was Ben Badler from, I think, is he Baseball America or is he Baseball Prospectus? Anyways, Ben Badler tweeted, if the Cubs are truly committed to winning, they will start Chris Bryant in AAA for a couple weeks. So, yeah, it's all just, kind of playing through the media. But everybody knows the rules. They agreed to them in the collective bargaining agreement. And that said that if a player doesn't get a full year of service time, which will be a couple weeks this year for Chris Bryant, if he loses those couple weeks, he won't get that service time. And that extends his free agency another year. So, everybody's playing by the same rules here. And, we all know that they'd be stupid to put him up there and lose his prime career year where, being a Scott Boras client, he's going to leave.
This, and I mean, there's so much being said right now in the media. There are people, it almost kind of feels like if you have been negative about the Cubs and you've been negative about the way that they've done things over the last 3 years, like various writers at the Sun-Times have, and I mean, really just it's not limited to the Sun-Times, but other people. It almost feels to me like this is their last chance to criticize, because it's like, oh shit, our days are numbered. Well, we better go out with this. I mean,
yeah. Well, they'll always have strikeouts to complain about, but that might be all they're left with.
Good point. But I mean, it almost feels like it feels like lazy journalism on my, on one hand, I think. On the other hand, and I'm going to try to play the devil's advocate here. I mean, there have been a couple of columns written saying, what if the Cubs come up one game short in the playoff run? I think even if, okay, that was how long. That was the extent of me trying to play devil's advocate. Apparently,
That's it.
they said this.
And here's why they're wrong.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm kind of curious what you guys think about this, and I think I know how you feel. But let's say the Cubs do miss the playoffs in 2015 by one game because they chose to leave Chris Bryant in AA or in AAA. Let's say for a month or however long they decide to leave him there. I mean, let's say you can actually say, "Yep, that probably would have made a difference." Is that worth losing an entire year at the end of this
I guess
contract?
before I even go that far, I would say if the Cubs lose by 1 or 2 games, Chris Bryant isn't the reason if he were left if he was sent to Iowa for a couple weeks, because, and I don't remember who said it, but I just heard it could have been Len, I can't remember, but basically Chris Bryant is not going to play 162 games at the major league level, even if he starts day one with the Cubs. So if he spends those couple weeks in Iowa, you're just sort of diverting some of that time, those starts there. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
He's not going to play all the games. And so you can make the same argument for every off day he gets every third week or whatever the schedule might be. You can make that same argument. So it just doesn't really hold water, I don't think. But to answer your question directly, at this point, it's hard to say yes, but yes, because, Bryant will be, I think he'll be 29 then in his 20. This would extend him through 2021 versus 2020. And so I think a late 20s Chris Bryant, if he's as good as he looks like he's going to be, that baseball value is so enormous. I don't think you can tell me, you can't make the argument to me that 2 weeks of him now is worth it.
Okay, so let me throw another one at you. Another, I guess, point that those people are trying to make. What if I just forgot what point I was going to make. Well, okay, let me think about how I got there. Because I also heard them talking about, like, well, you don't know if Chris Bryant could pan out. But then if you don't know if he's going to pan, right, but who's to say he's going to make that big of an impact this year then? I mean, if you're going to say, oh, maybe he won't pan out and he won't be worth anything in 2021, well, then why? It's not like he'd come in now and be amazing and then not be worth anything at the back end of the contract. I mean, injuries, I guess, but
yeah, even if he's not a superstar sort of future Hall of Famer guy and he's just an everyday really solid starter, that's still pretty valuable at the late end of a, free agency. It's still, those guys now are getting paid $10 to $15 million. So in 2021, that's probably a, $15 to $20 million year of just an everyday starter.
Okay,
So,
now I
don't
remember.
know.
Now I remember the other point I was going to make. One of their points. What about the idea that if the Cubs play hardball with this, it will ruin the relationship from this going forward, and signing him in the long term will be impossible, and the entire relationship will be rocky?
I think it's already rocky. There's no relationship to ruin, Like, they're already divorced parents. They're just getting along because they have kids together. And so, like, they're not. This isn't. I don't know. It's not.
Well, I haven't really seen
Nobody in baseball front offices like Scott Boras. You can't ruin that relationship because all he
I'm
cares
talking about
about
the
is the
relationship
money.
with Bryant, and I understand that he is representing Bryant.
But the day he hired Boras, I think that is the day he entered that, and he has to understand what that means.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like Bryant is the kind of person that is going to hold. I mean, sure, he's a person, so you're going to hold grudges and stuff, but he just seems a little bit different to me than a lot of players with large egos and everything.
And to his credit, he played the middle ground really well. And when he was asked for comments, he said that he was glad to have Boras fighting for him, but at the same time, he thought the Cubs and the Ricketts had treated him really well. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's too big of an issue. Because at the end of the day, like, the only people that are too worried about the money are Bryant and Boris. I don't think the Cubs are not doing this for money. The Cubs are doing this for service time and to have him on the team longer. I don't think the Cubs are too worried about the contract later. But Boris and Bryant are, because that's millions of dollars that are not going in their pocket.
Right.
So
do you feel like it might be harder to lock him up long term or to sign him at the end of this contract based on if the Cubs leave him in Iowa for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month?
To me, it's like just history tells us that Scott Boras doesn't sign team-friendly deals like a Castro and Rizzo type situation. That doesn't happen, and typically superstar players that came up through a system don't stay in that system at the end of their initial service time when they reach free agency. And I looked up a list once, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's a pretty big list. I mean, like you're looking at guys like Ellsbury, who grew up, or is it Ellsbury that left for New York?
Yeah,
after
he did.
being coming up through the Boston system. Cecil Fielder, guys like that. Like they don't stick with their original.
Right, they're going to go to whoever pays most.
Mm-hmm. That's
Whoever's
just the
willing
Boris
to pay
track
the most.
record.
Right.
And I wouldn't think Bryant would be any different.
Yeah. So I mean, on the other hand, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that this. I don't think 7 years from now, 6 years from now, I don't think they're going to be like, well, what about those 2 weeks? Like, I mean, I'm sure it'll be brought up, but I mean, there's plenty of opportunities to ruin relationships between now and then. There will be several ways, and I mean, arbitration stuff could get pretty ugly. So I just don't. I don't care. I still, I just don't think you can look at this situation and say, oh, look, see, the Cubs aren't serious about winning. Well, give me a break. No, they're serious. They're so serious about winning that they want to win in 2021. If they weren't serious about winning, then they would bring him up and sell a bunch of tickets.
Right.
But-
Well, they don't have the tickets to sell because the bleachers won't be open.
Good point. Good point. Any thoughts on this, Andy?
I mean, you guys pretty much said it all, but I mean, if Chris Bryant were on the team and they then limp into the playoffs by 1 or 2 games, I mean, it's hard to see a young team like they're going to be making a deep run in the playoffs anyway, whereas you're going to have probably a lot more maturity and things like that, in 2021, those later years in the Bryant, in Bryant's tenure there, where, it just makes a lot of sense for long-term success to trade those 2 weeks maybe for that.
That said, I cannot wait to see Chris Bryant at Wrigley Field.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning him. It's not like we don't want to see him play there because, I mean, it's a pleasure to watch.
Yeah.
Right. I can't wait until. And you know what? If the Cubs decided, look, this is what we're going to do, we're going to call him up now and we'll sort it out later. I'm not like I would. Okay, cool. April baseball got more interesting.
And the other funny thing that's like, it's really impossible to know or even for us to consider is that Epstein and the Cubs might very well be only thinking about baseball. And because we talk about the money and the Boris and all this other BS, but maybe the reality is he does need a month in AAA for defense or who knows what. Like they know more about his development than we do, and
Right.
for all we know, they really don't care about all this stuff, and that they're only making decisions based on basic. Because it's offensively, the guy's ready. Like the guy can hit anybody, and he can hit them hard. But defensively, he does probably need some work. But that's still a rough argument to make because he's so good offensively that he's valuable on any team. But still, who knows? We'll see what they do.
Justin, I only was at the Field 1 or whatever where the big leaguers were doing drills and warming up once, really out of the whole time we were there. And I watched Bryant taking grounders at third, and he mishandled a few in the limited amount of time that I was watching. So I don't think it's just I don't think it's just sophism trying to make an argument that he needs to work on his defense. I mean, I think he truly does.
Mm-hmm. And
Yes,
then
but-
there's plenty of people probably saying, "What if the NL had DH? You would not be able to make any argument that he doesn't start the season."
Yeah,
Some
I
of
just
those
think,
arguments.
and then also the Cubs have talked. He's going to get some time in the outfield now for spring training, and I think that's probably what we'll see when he goes to Iowa too. Probably split time between third base and the outfield. So I mean, they really could have been sticking him in the outfield all the time here in spring training, but I mean, you got to get other people their time out there too. So let's talk about spring training. Andy, you and I returned yesterday from spring training. I will say the drive home is way, way worse than the drive there.
Yeah, that was rough. I mean, we went through the entire gamut of emotions. Despair, hope, giddiness. I mean, it was
And more
quite-
despair.
it was quite the journey. Not just literally, but I don't know.
Yeah, we decided.
Miami doesn't believe in airplanes.
No, we believe in Toyota Corollas with manual door locks.
Roll up windows.
Yeah, it was funny because Corey gave me his spare key. So when we went to the car, I would unlock my side with my own key.
I don't know why you think that's so funny.
Hmm.
You seem to
it's
really get a kick out of
2015.
that. I know. It's a great little car, though.
Yeah, it served us
It
well.
is.
And
But yeah, we-
and it is worth mentioning that when we got home to my house, Corey was dropping me off. I pushed the seat forward to just make sure I didn't drop anything that rolled underneath the seat, and there was a dead mouse under there.
Oh no! It had obviously been there since you left.
Oh, it's been there forever.
Oh no!
It was caught in a mouse trap.
Oh my gosh!
I had a
You
bit
didn't
of a
smell
mouse
its
issue
rotting
with this.
carcass.
No, I didn't smell it all.
Oh no!
So that was good to know I was sleeping on top of that the whole time.
Better dead than alive, I guess.
Oh man, I had a bit of a mouse problem this year. Okay, guys.
In the car.
You didn't know I had a mouse problem in my car?
I did know that. I remember. You need some farm cats out there on the farm.
I know we're gonna get some. But back to baseball. Well, actually, not back to baseball. Yeah, we drove I don't know. It took us 5 hours longer to get home. A big reason for that was that we wanted to go see Four Corners, and when we got there, 5:45 in the evening, they were closed. They closed at 5.
Oh man, I wanted to Hulk out on that.
So not only does the Corolla not have power locks, your phones don't have internet.
Well, we didn't even think about. I didn't know that it was really I just thought it was like a place you pull over and it's like, oh look, here's Four Corners. I
Yeah,
didn't
right
realize
next
it was
to the
like
highway.
a state
I get-
park.
Okay.
Why? Yeah, why would it be? Why wouldn't it be just someplace you could pull over and see the little spot on the ground? But it's on Navajo land, and so I think that they run this fenced-in thing with vendors and all this stuff, and that's the reason why we weren't able to get in there. But basically, by going there, it determined for us that we were going to be on 2-lane highways going through Colorado,
For the next 8 hours.
and so that really.
Eastern Colorado is rough.
Yeah, so we kind of came in the southern part and then drove all the way across, and then yeah,
We drove in like an L shape. We went all the way across the bottom, within about 100 miles of the eastern border, and then all the way to the top. So to get into Nebraska. So it was the craziest route, really.
yeah.
But we had some fun times on the way home. I mean, I'm not gonna say it was all terrible.
No, it was okay. Not as fun as on the way out, though. So we obviously saw a lot at spring training. When we recorded last week's episode, we had been there. That was the end of our first day. So we kind of want to just go through some of the things that we saw that are worth mentioning there at the games and at the practice fields and everything on the backfields. Andy, what would you say was just the general vibe with Cubs fans there?
With Cubs fans or with the players?
Well, both, I guess.
Well, as far as just the vibe of the training, like Corey and I went to the backfields almost every morning, and the Cubs really were running a pretty tight ship as far as doing workouts. They had all the fields, something going on in all the fields, and the players were pretty much divided up by basically like service time. And then they also had the coaches from various levels in the system out there on the different fields running through drills with the players. And so it was like clockwork the way that they were running through, like bunting drills, ground ball drills, things like that. But then also, I mean, there was still some levity to it. It was clear that players were having fun and weren't, necessarily feeling pressure all the time. I mean, there was a time I saw one of the shortstops throw his, like I said last week, throw his glove in the air to try to knock down a line drive that was above his head, and Corey took a picture of, who was that player you took a picture of?
It wasn't Stinnett, was it?
No. Anyway, Corey got a picture of a player like doing a flying Bruce Lee kick in the air, basically. So they're having fun, but they're also right down to business.
Yeah. I think, and kind of going back to what you said about training and like bunt drills and stuff, we walked over, I think only once, we went to the like number 1 practice field or whatever it was where the big leaguers were kind of warming up for the day. And I mean, how long were they doing those bunt drills there? I mean, it was the entire time I was standing there. They were doing these bunt drills with like the major league players.
Yeah, it was.
I would say at least 45 minutes or an hour, maybe.
Yeah,
it seemed like it.
But as I was watching those, I thought, well, it really gets them working as a unit. It makes the catcher kind of take charge in certain instances, or I guess various people take charge in certain instances, and requires other people to give way, and so it really encourages them functioning as a unit and being very vocal and deliberate in their actions. So I could see why they would do that, because I think it helps build. It helps build a community, helps build, I guess just being a team.
Yeah, I found it funny that, here it is just a few hours before their spring training game, and like Rizzo is starting off at first base and then jogging towards home to field a bunt over and over and over, and you would think somebody like Anthony Rizzo would kind of have it down, but I mean, there was also major league players bunting the ball, and they were doing it with live pitching. So I think it was just kind of a drill for everybody, but it wasn't just for the batters. It was also, trying to, when a bunt happens like that, it's all kind of like there's a lot of moving parts, and everybody has different roles. So it's just fun to watch that, and interesting to see how much they were practicing that.
Yeah.
Let's, I guess, let's focus on the big league players that we saw at spring training, and kind of how they're doing right now. Did anybody that will be on the major league team? Did any of those players stand out to you, Andy?
Yeah, I guess I would say that Castro, for example, he seemed like very. Kind of already seemed to have his head in the clouds a little bit, and didn't seem to be very sharp for sure on defense, and he hasn't been hitting well either, but he just kind of seemed like he wasn't that focused to me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember how many errors or at least kind of like botched plays he had, but it seemed pretty frequent, that it was happening pretty frequently throughout the week that we were there.
He has 2.
He has 2 errors.
2, yeah.
But I seem to remember, like, at one point they didn't turn a double play because of how he mishandled the ball. I mean, he just did not. You're right. I mean, he just didn't look sharp.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, watching Montero was a pleasure. I mean, he just seemed like such a pro as far as the way he handles himself, and you could see some leadership with him. And so we also had a couple, I guess both Tim and Mick mentioned they thought he was going to be one of the most important additions to the Cubs, that happened in the offseason. So, and I think that was kind of reflected on the field.
And it seemed like he had really very timely hitting too.
Mm-hmm.
When he was up and the Cubs needed a hit, he seemed to come through. Which we had talked with a Diamondbacks fan while we were out there, and he had kind of said the opposite. That when the Diamondbacks needed him to come through, he was always swinging for the fences. But we didn't see much of that while we were out there. I mean, it seemed like I can think of at least 2 at bats where they had a runner in scoring position and he drove them in.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing I've been a little surprised on the catching side is that the amount of platooning, like the guys seem to be getting pretty equal work with Wellington, and I kind of thought maybe Montero would get a lot of, I don't know, maybe like a 60% of the starts just based on the fact that he has to get used to the staff and stuff like that. And I'm not looking at the numbers, but it seems like they're splitting them up pretty evenly.
You're right. I mean, it seemed like that to me too. That Wellington really has played. It almost felt like more than either of the other catchers to me.
Well, they are kind of shopping him too.
Sure, exactly. I mean, yeah, that's my point. I guess is that they are giving him a chance to really show what he can do, and he has acquitted himself well. And I guess now that I'm looking, Castillo's played in 9 games, whereas Ross and Montero have played in 7. So he has played in a couple more games than either of those 2 guys. And so I think part of it is, like you said, Corey, the Cubs are trying to showcase him a little bit, and he's had a good showing in spring training.
Yeah, I mean, offensively, he's really tearing it up. He's hitting like 375 and OBP of 444, and his pitch framing is always going to be an issue, but his arm has been pretty impressive at spring training too. So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe you guys were at that game, but yeah, he had one where he like threw from his knees just a bullet to second. It was pretty impressive. So
was that one that Castro dropped?
I don't think so.
No, I do remember him throwing somebody out and Castro mishandling it.
But he did gun a guy down in the night game we were at against the Diamondbacks. He nailed a dude at second by a mile.
Yeah.
So he'll give the people who don't want to see him go plenty of things to complain about once he does go. But but who knows? Maybe he's gonna break camp with them and he'll still be there,
warming up those flexing muscles for the Cubs. Trade him away.
That's right.
But
another
player really, yeah. But before you mention anyone else, Corey, I mean I think I was more impressed by a lot of the minor league players, or the guys that are kind of on the bubble, rather than a lot of the big league players. But I guess one other one. Were you going to talk about Soler?
Go ahead. I was going to talk about somebody else, but go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah. Soler is quietly putting together a pretty good spring training. Maybe not that quietly, but he's not getting as much attention because of Chris Bryant, and but he has played pretty well. I mean, the guy has only had 24 at-bats, but he's hitting 375. He's getting on base a ton. He only has 4 strikeouts in those 24 at-bats. I think he just is looking very good. I thought he was pretty impressive. He had 2 homers. He has 5 RBIs. He seems pretty sharp out of the gate.
Yeah, and showing off his arm there in right field. And it's kind of funny because sometimes he looks like a really, really good defender, and then sometimes he looks not very good at all.
I sort of wonder if he's like gotten by on his arm for so long that, so maybe when he's going after balls, he doesn't quite look as good, but once he gets a hold of it, it's like, oh boy, you don't want to test him.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of gotten away with a little more, but damn, that arm is insane. And I wonder too if that, and he's young, but if that might at sometimes affect his decision making, where he'll throw to third when he shouldn't, or stuff like that, just because he can.
Yeah. I guess worth mentioning a player that has been another player in addition to Castro that's been a little disappointing, Javier Baez. Um, yeah, strikeouts, of course, but it's kind of in the way that he's striking out is what's troubling. Um, he is swinging at pitches that he has no reason to even consider. He's just looked almost lost at the plate, and speaking of heads in the clouds on defense, to me at different points while we were there, he looked not like he wasn't. I don't know. I'm having trouble verbalizing it, but the one play that I'm thinking about, and I'm sure you remember, Andy. There was a hit to left field, and the runner, the guy that hit it, went to stretch it into a double, and Baez was nowhere near second base. He was basically over where the shortstop would be, and then Rizzo identified it immediately and was running alongside the hitter to try to get ready at second for a play at second base. And I mean, it was just like, what was he doing? He was nowhere, and you could tell that Rizzo. I mean, I did see Rizzo kind of shake his head, and
My only thought was that maybe he, for a second, forgot that he was playing second instead of shortstop. Thought he had to go cut it off. But yeah, so I think it was Russell was playing maybe, and he went over to cut it off, and so did Javi. It was really bizarre.
yeah. And so that was just kind of like, I guess when that happened and knowing, seeing how he's doing at the plate right now, it's just kind of disappointing. And I still think he'll be starting off in Iowa. I mean, I think if he breaks camp with the Cubs, he's in for a rough stretch, because it's not like, oh, he's playing out in the warm weather and really heating things up, kind of like he did last spring. He looks at times as lost as he did towards the end of the season, and I think, and in talking with some people out there that are familiar with him and what's going on with them, I don't think, like, the people that know him and have seen him for a long time are not ready to write him off. And quite the opposite. They're still pretty hopeful about him and think that he's going to figure it out. But I can't see him breaking camp with the Cubs and kind of like getting into a groove, because
Sure.
he just looks so lost at the plate.
It's very hard to see him breaking camp with the Cubs, and I think it's in his best interest to get him out of the scrutiny of the fans for a little while, down to Iowa, give him a chance to work on things where he's not under a magnifying glass quite as much with Cubs fans, and just give him a chance to have a little bit more low pressure of an environment to try to get back on track and get in the groove again.
Right, because, I mean, and if you look at it, I mean, if the Cubs are potentially a playoff team this year, he could really hurt you at second base until he figures this out. I think once he does, then, yeah, that's who you want at second base or wherever they decide to put him. But if he's not playing well, I mean, you're better off with La Stella there.
Right. I was gonna say, and then La Stella wasn't brought for his, entirely for his bat, but he's offensively doing pretty well in spring training and hitting well, so you're not losing a ton there. And yeah, La Stella looks like the better option at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, I think obviously the Cubs want Baez to be the long-term second baseman, or like I said, wherever they want him on the team. But like, it just doesn't seem like. I don't know how you can take him to Chicago to start the season. I just think he has to start in Iowa. The only other player I kind of wanted to talk about, the big league, I guess we're assuming big league player, is Matt Caesar. He's playing really well, and I mean, despite the unexpected power that he's showing, he's looked really good in the field. I think he's a smart ball player. I don't know how smart it is to go to crash into a wall during spring training, but no lack of effort there. So,
Right, I wouldn't be that surprised to see him traded at some point. Sadly, I like the guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that happened either. I mean, because he's going to play like a sort of an outfield utility kind of a role, I would think. But,
Right.
And then you've got Alcantara, who can pretty much play wherever you put him. And he seems like the more exciting utility guy than Caesar. Although I do like Caesar a lot.
And I like seeing him playing well right now. It's really good to see him. You hate to. It seems like every other time we see him, he's kind of that like 215 hitter, and it's just cool to see him playing well, doing good things in the field, and people talking about him. I'm a fan of his. Let's talk about the B game, and for folks that maybe aren't familiar with the B game, Andy, could you kind of describe what it was?
Yeah. First of all, it was very unhyped, unpromoted. It wasn't promoted really that much. I mean, they mentioned it on the Cubs.com broadcast, and it was mentioned, of course, on Twitter via various outlets. But this B game happened at Sloan Park on Thursday afternoon at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they had a night game that night against the Diamondbacks. So this was a chance for the Cubs to play anyone whom they weren't planning on playing in that night game, in this B game against the Angels. And so Corey and I went there, and I kind of expected there to be maybe like 1,000 people or something like that there. But how many people would you say actually were in attendance, Corey?
Maybe 300.
Yeah, maybe 300. And so we basically could pick wherever we wanted to sit in the park, and it was incredible because we knew, I think Almora played in that game. Bryant played in the game. It was a Kyle Hendricks start, so we got a chance to see Kyle Hendricks pitch from. I mean, we were sitting right behind home plate.
And they don't charge for admission on those games?
Yeah, and it was open to the public.
That's insane that only 300 people show up to a free game where
right. And I mean,
those guys are playing.
Was Alcantara playing?
Alcantara played, I believe.
That whole
Is that the
week's
one Bryant played in and hit a home run?
Yeah,
or is that
he
a
hit
different
that
one?
Yes.
Oh, it was that one.
Yeah,
Jeez.
and so first of all, though, let me start with Kyle Hendricks. It was really fun to watch him work. I mean, his stuff looked really great. So, viewing it from that perspective, he did start to get hit kind of hard when it was the second or even the beginning of the third time through the Angels' order, and so I think that could be a problem all season. Like once guys get used to his stuff and what he's working with, he could kind of be getting into a danger zone there. But man, he's good. I'm really glad to have him in the rotation, and seeing him from really close up kind of confirmed that for me.
Yeah. By the way, before I forget, if you're in Arizona, there is another B game coming up, I believe, on Tuesday, and it's like at 10 in the morning. But yeah, another cool thing was that you could basically, as Andy said, you could sit wherever you wanted, but like the coaching staff was still there. So I mean, we overheard conversations between Madden and the A's. It wasn't Mike Scioscia wasn't there. I don't know who they had there, but whoever was representing the Angels, I guess. But it was really kind of cool it was like you were sitting at a practice, I guess. I don't know. It was, somebody worded it was kind of like our own private game, and it kind of was. I mean, it was cool, and you could I mean, there were people talking with Madden. As he walked across, he talked with people. Access to the players, I mean, that was kind of cool to get down close to Chris Bryant. I mean, I just stood where there were a lot of people asking for autographs and stuff, and I think he signed something for everybody that was standing there that wanted something signed, and it was cool just to see how big he is. I mean, he's so huge. Oh, Addison Russell played that game too.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. I mean, we were sitting there, and I turned around and looked over our shoulder, and Theo and Jed were sitting there, and Ricketts was walking around. I mean, it was really cool, and some of the beat writers were sitting in the stands, doing their stuff from there. Right. So it was just a lot more relaxed atmosphere. I mean, spring training is already kind of relaxed, but really in being at these games, it doesn't feel as much like spring training as maybe the games did at HoCom or maybe in other years just because there is so much excitement. I mean, we went to the Thursday night game at Salt River Fields for the Cubs Diamondbacks, and I mean, honestly, that felt like a big league game.
It
felt
did,
like
yeah.
it felt like we were at a big league game. So
In this game, too, like there's all kinds of little quirky things that happen. The Cubs, for example, had 10 batters in their lineup. They had a DH and they had the pitcher spot. So we got a
So do
kick
they
out of
have
that.
regular umpires, just like a regular game? And
We were
Yeah.
wondering that when we walked in, and then we thought, well, maybe a coach is just going to be calling balls and strikes or something, and then a full crew came in, kind of much to our surprise, I would say. I wasn't really expecting that.
yeah, I would, like maybe a couple guys work it, like you got your home plate and your second base ump or something.
But they had a full crew, right, Corey?
yeah, I think so. I honestly I didn't pay much attention to the umpires.
I just looked at
that's all I
Danny,
would have been looking at. Is the
Danny Rocket. Danny Rocket, one of the listeners, one of our listeners, and then also a contributor to Bleed Cubby Blue that we spent some time with. He took a bunch of pictures of the game and posted them over there at Bleed Cubby Blue. And I remember seeing one of his pictures was a picture of the umpire crew, and it was a full crew. It was kind of surprising.
But I mean, like, okay, for instance, at one point the Cubs had a first base coach, a new first base coach named Kyle Schwarber. He was standing over there coaching first base. Somebody claims, and I don't know if it's true or not, but somebody claims that that the Cubs, like the teams, ended the inning after only 2 outs. I don't know if that's true, but the Cubs won the game and then ended up going ahead and batting the bottom of the ninth. Yeah, there was just all sorts of. I mean, there was no Tim Sheridan wasn't there doing the public address thing, so
They put one other. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but one other thing I thought was funny too was they pulled Montero for Schwarber. So Schwarber's in the game, but the next inning Montero comes up to bat. Again, there's all kinds of.
So
little
when you
goofy
say
things
B
like
game,
that.
like there's MLB roster guys on it. I assumed it would.
oh
be
yeah,
In fact, it
minor
was.
league or
In
fringe
fact, there
guys.
were fewer like lower level minor guys in the game than I expected. Wouldn't you say, Corey? I don't know, but I can't speak to the Angels side. I'm sure a lot of those guys. In fact, I didn't recognize really any of those players. But
no, Mike Trout.
So they must have just. Yeah, they must have just treated it like a split squad. Like if you're not playing tonight, you're playing today.
yes,
yeah,
that's at least the way the Cubs treated it.
right. Because I was kind of concerned when players walked in, when the Cubs players walked in, and nobody had their names on the back of their jerseys. I was like, oh man, how are we ever going to figure this out? Because you don't always know who. I mean, when we spent time over at the practice fields, sometimes it's hard. I mean, actually, over at the backfields, they do have a lot of them do have their last names on the back of their jerseys, so that's really nice.
In fact,
But-
most I would say.
Yeah. But then like they came into this game and they didn't have them. Most didn't have them, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be like watching. And there's no like their names were never on the scoreboard, so somebody would come up to bat, and sometimes you just weren't even real sure who it was.
Right, but so for the most part, though, it was players for the Cubs that either are going to be on the big league squad this year or are going to be at the lowest, maybe like Double-A Tennessee.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of guys that aren't maybe as recognizable from the system that got in the game, like Anthony Giansanti and Jae-Hoon Ha.
Right. Although there are few enough people there, as the person's walking up, you could probably yell, "Who are you?" and they tell you. So
So it was awesome. It was like the most relaxing big league game experience as a spectator I've ever had too.
yeah, it was a lot, especially that Chris Bryant was there, and to see him hit that home run, and I mean, he just crushed it. It was pretty amazing to watch.
The crack of the bat from about 20 feet away was striking.
Yeah.
It was
So if you
incredible.
count that one, he's got 9. Is that
Yes.
the right number?
Yeah, his
Yeah.
numbers right now have an asterisk for
Yeah.
For home
and he's
runs.
played in 12 games or something.
Yeah.
He's got 9 home runs. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. If you have the opportunity ever to go to one of these B games, I mean, I don't know if they're all like this, but that one was a ton of fun to watch. The one thing that was not fun to watch was Daniel Bard, and as he was warming up, he looked really, really shaky. I would say Schwarber earned his money just in warming Daniel Bard up because he was diving all over the place trying to catch the pitches.
And we were feeling bad for the players that were going to have to stand in there against him a little bit.
Like the second player that went up was seriously like 5'9", 150 pounds. And yeah, so as Bard was warming up, we set the over-under at 1.5 at how many batters he hit. And then he promptly plunked the first batter.
Oh my gosh.
And then I had guessed 1.5 just to be goofy, of course. And then, but I believe that I won the bet because as he was pitching to the second guy, it was a wild pitch that bounced off the bricks and hit the guy in the on-deck circle. So we counted him as the half.
But I don't know. I mean, I'm pulling for the guy to get it together. But I said to Corey, I mean, we're probably witnessing the end of a career here. You know, there's a good chance that we're witnessing somebody's playing days perhaps coming to an end, and so it kind of puts things into perspective when you think about it in those terms. And
can you imagine how frustrating that must be for a guy like that, though? Like,
oh yeah,
to go from where he was to this, where he can't even get it over the plate, and
I can't remember if he faced 3 batters, I think, and I mean, I think maybe he threw 2 strikes, and it wasn't like he was just barely missing. I mean, there were pitches that like Schwarber just couldn't even get to.
Yeah,
it was actually
missing with
scary.
all of his. He was missing with all of his breaking stuff, and the couple strikes that he got were on fastballs. And yeah, I mean, he was up to maybe 15 or 16 pitches and had thrown 2 strikes out of the group. But the kind of a little subplot to the whole thing was seeing how Schwarber would handle a situation like that, where there's a guy who's struggling with his control, and can he, you know, in his role as a catcher, what is he going to do to try to get him back on track? So I saw a few things that he did. I mean, he kind of stepped outside of the batter's box and just sort of nodded and, you know, would say something encouraging to Bard before he threw it back. But I'm sure that was kind of new territory for him.
Maybe he just needs new glasses, like Wild Thing and Major League.
I don't know.
Because I mean, Bard throws hard. I don't know if he still does, but like,
oh yeah,
can you imagine stepping in there with that guy throwing, and you don't know where it's going? Like,
I was seriously,
Brady Johnson at your head or something.
Right, I was really nervous that we were going to witness something really bad because I mean he was just, he was not anywhere close.
And he did throw hard, that's for sure.
That's scary.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the minor leaguers. We're going kind of long here, but the minor leaguers that played in the big league games. We mentioned Schwarber. We did see Schwarber quite a bit, and so that was kind of nice to see some more of him. Almora is a player that, I mean, he really surprised me just in what we saw this week. But he's playing really well. He's batting .381 in 21 at bats.
And I got to imagine that that average has gone up pretty significantly this last week because he's been on quite a tear. And we also saw him in the B game do a pretty incredible Superman dive to catch a ball in center field as well. So the guy is just really just kind of hot right now.
Right, and that's really good considering how I think a lot of people lost faith in him after last season, and it would be nice to see him really turn things around this year and perform better. But it looked pretty rough. I'm gonna have to edit all that because you can hear Kurt pissing in the background.
Can you still hear it?
He just stopped. Could you hear it?
No. Can you hear the flushing?
Gosh. Gotta turn his mic off before he leaves. Hey, Kurt.
Hey, did I miss something?
Yeah, you missed hearing yourself pissing.
Oh. Well, I don't mind.
Oh,
it's not
boy.
even that close. I must have pissed
Oh,
hard.
man. I'll cut it out.
It's somewhat close, but it's not like it's 2 feet away.
Huh.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. Any other, I guess, minor leaguers, like players that we know will be in the minor leagues this year? Anyone else you want to talk about, Andy? I mean, we saw a lot.
Yeah, maybe we could talk about some of the minor league players we saw in the backfields. I got to see Stinnett pitch to Mark Zagunis, the number 2 and 3 picks in the Cubs 2014 first-year player draft. And so they were pitching in just a scrimmage. Stinnett was pitching in a scrimmage game, but he looks pretty impressive, and he's a pretty big guy, quite the stature. And Zagunis also impressed me at times on the backfields, and so it was just cool to see a lot of the players that we just heard their names last year. We got to finally see them in person, see them perform a little bit. We saw Dylan Cease throw a live BP session. So it just that was a really cool aspect of it, is kind of just seeing these players that were familiar with their names, but not with their play or what they look like even.
Yeah. So was that the day that they were playing the Canadian team, or was that a different?
That was the next day.
Okay. Who were they playing that day? I can't even remember.
They were playing each other. It was.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They had 2 squads set up and were playing. Yeah, that was fun to watch. And you saw a couple of the international signings, right?
Right, yeah. So Eloy Jimenez was playing, and he is huge.
Dude is a monster, man.
Huge. And
Bigger
Gleyber
than Chris
Torres.
Bryant?
No, he's not
Thicker.
that big. Yeah,
Just more muscular, probably. I would say.
he kind of looks like a slightly miniature Jorge Soler, and that's like my unofficial, like
Slightly
non-scout.
miniature.
That's my unscout, non-scout commentary.
Episode title: Slightly Miniature Jorge Soler. So we saw Eloy and we saw Gleyber Torres also, who is starting to get a little buzz surrounding him, and he is a little bit shorter as far as.
He's almost built like Addison Russell, kind of.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. So.
Like, kind of thicker upper body, but not real tall or anything.
Yeah. Some guys that we didn't see a lot of and we were pretty surprised about. One I guess would be Dan Vogelbach. I thought we would see a lot more of him just in games and just on the backfields even, but I only remember seeing him once the whole time we were there, really.
Yeah, as we kind of talked about that as we left, and I couldn't even think of when I did. I feel like I saw him. Oh, I saw him doing drills on the backfields at first base. And I think that's the only time I saw him.
Yeah, so I thought that was a little bit strange, personally, but
yeah, I think that kind of sums up everything that we saw as far as players go. I will tell one story. I was sitting watching. I think it was the day that they were playing the Canadian. There was like a Canadian team of like 17 and 18-year-olds that some of the younger players in the Cubs organization were playing. And I thought it was kind of funny because, the stereotypical Canadian thing, how we Americans stereotype Canadians. As I was sitting there, one of the coaches from the Canadian team came over and offered me muffins.
Was he wearing flannel?
Yeah.
Well, their
Drinking
uniforms
syrup.
just flannel, head to toe.
But I was sitting there and I was surrounded when the game finally started. I was surrounded by Cubs minor league players, and of course at that point they were just kind of wearing like workout clothes, and I wasn't able to identify any of them really sitting around me. I'm not sure who they were, but it was just kind of interesting to sit there and listen to their conversations. At one point I heard the guy that was sitting right behind me was talking to 2 other guys, and he goes, hey, do you guys, like every time you're in there, and he must have been talking in like the building where the training facility is and everything like that. He goes, every time you turn a corner, there's some computer nerd. And he was like, I bet 90% of them never even played a sport in their lives. all these, and they were like talking about computer nerds, and I just thought it was kind of funny because, we don't really think about how athletes who are jocks think about people that they would consider to be nerds, kind of having a say in how things are going, and what's happening. I mean, there are a lot of computer nerds walking around, I mean, they're setting up cameras and all that kind of stuff. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. I would imagine, we like to think that everything's all like hunky dory, with inside the walls and stuff like that. But I would imagine there is a little bit of tension with some of these baseball players that, even if they're getting information from quote unquote computer nerds, they're probably thinking, well, I know more than them because I play the game. And I think there is a lot of that in baseball right now.
Even in front offices.
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Well, the smart ones will realize fairly quickly that the nerds will either weed them out or increase their salary fairly quickly.
Yeah, I should have been like, you may want to hitch your wagon to those computer nerds.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to know. Like, I wonder what the player knowledge of sabermetrics is, and if they even pay attention. I suppose the smart ones really do, but then there's a handful that just ignore it entirely.
Right.
Maybe even buy them like a new pocket protector or something, just to kind of butter them up a little bit.
Right.
And I love that they call them computer nerds, like it's 1985. You're a computer nerd.
Right. It's like, dude, you got a computer in your pocket right now. Such computer nerds. Working on spreadsheets.
There goes Zero Cool or whatever. I'm trying to think of the name of the hacker from the movie Hackers. Yeah, Zero Cool. Crash override, determining my future.
Flashing green cursor.
Let's see. Well, I guess we should talk about our broadcasting experience.
Yeah, I mean, I can be pretty brief about that, but just.
Well, you might want to explain it, yeah, for people who don't know what we're talking about.
Okay, so we interviewed. This is the very shortened version, but we interviewed Mick Gillespie. The guy is really great, but we interviewed him the first time on last Sunday, and the interview was basically ruined by the wind. It was unsalvageable. Corey did his best to work on the file, but it was pretty much destroyed by the wind. So he wanted to get it done, pretty much however we could. Corey even was like, hey, sorry to take up your time. We can do it at some other point in the season. But his response was, no, let's try to get it done this week. And so then eventually it came up where he messaged Corey saying that, you guys want to come in and do the audio for our Cubs.com broadcast, and then we could just do the interview afterwards. And so that's how it happened. They made it possible for us to be up there in the booth. We had a little job to do. It wasn't anything too intense. I mean, basically we just had to mute things at the right time and play get the commercials, and the music started playing at the right time. So we didn't feel totally superfluous. But then just to be up there in the box with Len and Mick as they were broadcasting the game was so surreal. It was incredible. And I was just kind of almost giddy the whole time. I mean, sadly. I mean, it's just kind of full of excited, happy energy just being up there and seeing, kind of how this is done.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch how they interacted with each other. I mean, it was cool that the inning's over and we're going to commercial, and then we could take our headphones off and Len leans back in his chair and talks with us. So it was just it was surreal, and it was, I don't know, such a cool experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget it, and it just bears repeating that Mick is a really nice guy and very generous with his time, and we're very grateful for the experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, of all the moments you guys were out there, it was like, yeah, okay, I'm missing out some pretty great baseball and some nice weather, but when you guys got to do that, I was definitely like, oh my god.
Yeah, that was in the back of our that was in the back of our mind the whole time, but we really wished that you would have been there with us.
Yeah, I cried that day. I wept. But no, I did listen. I sat and I listened to it, and it was pretty cool to hear it from this end. And yeah, I didn't quite understand what you guys were doing really, but it's still cool that you're like standing in the booth and I'm like texting you while you're doing it, and yeah, that was pretty amazing.
But it's funny to talk to Mick afterwards too, him talking about working with Len and what great experience that is. But he also talked about how he would try to just kind of get Len going a couple times, like just get him, like when he asked him about the uniform colors, like he knew that Len doesn't necessarily like talking about stuff like that, so he deliberately brings it up.
That's pretty funny.
So I got quite a kick out of that, and there were a couple of pretty funny moments that came up. For example, one of the was it Rockies there? No, I'm sorry, Dodgers. One of the Dodgers pitchers there that came in the game that day was wearing number 0, just straight up number 0, not double zeros, just the number 0. And so Mick said something on the broadcast like, I can't remember the last time I've seen a player wearing the number 0, and Len said, yeah, that's strange. And Mick then presses the mute button on his microphone, and he turns around to us and he's like, yeah, get over here, slugger. Get over here, slugger. And then he unmutes it and talks about how it's like the type of number a mascot would be wearing, you know? So he was like making up like mascot names, like turning around and like making up mascot names to us, which I just got a huge kick out of that. And those guys almost kind of lost it on that part because Len was laughing too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was so much fun. It was really cool, just to really be around those guys and watch them do their work and how they set up for the games, how they have their notes in certain places, the rosters taped in certain places. It was just neat to see kind of like what their routine is. I'm sure that it was more simplified than what they normally have or what Len usually has. I mean, there was no TV monitor there. For him to look at or anything like that. It was just kind of him calling the game. But it was really cool. It was a lot of fun. And Mick, like you said, Andy, he's a great guy.
Yeah, I've always thought Mick is, I mean, of course I have a better knowledge of him than any other sort of minor league announcer, but man, what a great voice for like a Double-A team. It's always surprised me like how good he is and what a great voice he has working for the Smokies down there. So.
And I don't, I think Mick kind of deserves to be somewhere better, and I think that he will be in the near future.
Yeah, so
nothing against Tennessee, but
no.
And then the other thing, non-baseball related, we did our meetup with listeners, and that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, man, one thing I found out from being down there is that, or just I guess this was reinforced, is that we have really, really great listeners. I mean, really cool people. The group that was down there was especially cool. It was a pleasure to meet all these guys. We got to talk to Danny Rocket, and his girlfriend Nicole was there, I believe was her name. And they were fantastic to hang out with. Andy Hughes came over, and he was fun to talk to, and we talked about comedians a lot together and enjoyed that. Chris Bonner and his friend Kyle were also there, and Chris, he brought us a bunch of wonderful beer from the West Coast that we never really have a chance to buy out here, that doesn't get distribution out here. And I know that I don't know, that was kind of some expensive stuff that he brought us, and we were just very grateful. We're very grateful to him for doing that, and he was just a fun guy to hang out with to boot. We brought him some Quad Cities beers, kind of pale in comparison to what he gave us, but
right. We had to give him a couple of IVMV T-shirts because we felt like we kind of like picked his pockets with the exchange there.
So that was cool. Jeremy Thomas, who lives in the Phoenix area, also came out, and he was a fun guy to talk to and hang out with. Showed us his Cubs tattoo on his leg, and he, he's a diehard fan, and I can't wait, for him to see the Cubs have a playoff run. Michael Mock showed up at the game, and he was a nice guy and really fun to talk to. And then also, in Corey's extended family, we had Jeff and Jay as well, came out to the game, and Jeff and his wife Timmery, is that right, Corey?
Yeah,
had us out to their house for dinner one of the nights there too. So shout out to them, great people, and it was a pleasure to hang out with them.
Yeah, overall it was a great group, and it was cool that we kind of had the meetup planned on Thursday night, but I felt like it'd be better if we got to hang out with everybody beforehand, so that Thursday night wasn't this kind of like awkward thing, and we could actually hang out a little bit and everybody get to know each other. So we met up at a bar on Wednesday night, and then most of us, I think all of us except for Jeremy and Michael, were at the B game. So I mean, by the end of the night on Thursday night, it seemed like we had spent like an entire day with them in the night before. So it was a lot of fun, really nice guys. And it was that whole day was a lot of fun.
Also, let me give a shout out to Jason from New Mexico, whom we met up with in Albuquerque. We met up with him in front of the Walter White house from Breaking Bad, and then we exchanged beer from trunk to trunk right in front of.
There's a whole lot of like back alley beer exchanges going on.
Yeah, there was. We also gave some beer to Kurt out of our trunk in Iowa City on the way home.
On the way home.
But
thankfully, you stopped.
But Jason also treated us to breakfast, and his daughters were there, and just seemed like a great dude too. So it was a pleasure.
Wait, you're telling me you got free beer, free food, God, and you got to be in the booth. I messed up this year.
Got to sleep on top of a mouse.
Yep.
You get to miss four corners.
But you got your own. You got your own key to the Corolla, though. So.
I did, yeah, and I kept it too. I love that key so much. I kept it. It's up on my shelf right now in a prized place. So
you just did that so we'd have to go to spring training next year.
Yeah, you're not getting the.
I gotta go. I got one of his keys.
You're not getting your second key back until next year.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun, and I'm sure. I mean, we went long on this episode, but I'm sure we left certain things out, and we'll remember things. Also, I've kind of put all of the pictures together. I downloaded them off my camera, and Andy and I both took some on our phones. So I'm going to create an album on our Facebook page with all of the spring training pictures you can look at. Yeah, there's some cool stuff in there because we were able to get close, and I will get that up probably here in the next day or two. So let's skip reviews, iTunes reviews. But if you do, I know, sorry, Kurt. If you shop on Amazon, you would like to help support our podcast without it costing you a thing, you can go to ivnb.com and click on the Amazon link for your purchases, and Amazon gives us a cut, and it helps us pay our bills. So, Internet Muscle Flexes, do you guys have anything?
I have one, yes.
Nope.
Okay, go ahead. Is yours from...
Mine's from the Cubs Facebook page.
Okay, and so if this is your first time listening to our podcast, we find instances of folks on the internet flexing their muscles, just like it says, and kind of trying to exhibit their intelligence or their perceived intelligence of themselves, and kind of looking like fools, and that's why we read them. So go ahead, Andy.
Sure. My flex comes from the Cubs Facebook page, and it was this series of comments comes from a thread about the Cubs' 10-7 victory over the White Sox on Friday, and 4 Cubs players hit homers in that game, so everybody was pretty pumped up after the game. And here is what a couple people have to say about that. So commenter number 1 says, how many of these pitchers giving these home runs will be bagging groceries by the time the season starts? Spelled groceries with an apostrophe S. And then
and a capital G.
The next commenter says 0. I just love that. It's like the perfect flex. But then then a new commenter comes in and says, how many of the players that hit these home runs will be bagging groceries, that's how he spelled it, will be bagging groceries by the time the season starts is the real question. Then the original commenter says, that is true. like the guys that hit home runs were like, Alcantara, let's see, you had Alcantara, David Ross, you had Teagard and Giansanti, guys that are going to be in the Cubs minor league system. Clearly, they're just going to be out there begging groceries after this.
Oh, man. Well, my muscle flex comes from Cubs.com, and it's from the article about John Lester missing a start because of his dead arm. And I think, I can't remember I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I think the headline said something about how it's nothing out of ordinary, or maybe that was mentioned in the post or in the article. But that's what the gist of this article was. So the first person says, quote unquote, nothing out of the ordinary, because Lester takes off days and gets injured all the time. The second person says he averaged over 200 innings for the last 8 years. And then the first person comes back and says, of mediocrity.
Oh, man.
He gets injured all the time. No, he doesn't. Well, then he's mediocre.
Well, he sucks. No, he doesn't. Not at all.
So, I don't know. I enjoyed that one.
Oh, man.
So that does it for this week's episode. And this week's episode was brought to you by all of our Patreon supporters. Thanks to all of you that jumped on board this last week: Tyson Worth, Ed Baum, Joe Lamorte, and Sean Waters. We also got our first contributor at the Ultimate IVMB Patreon supporter level. And after seeing that, I realized we obviously didn't put a lot of thought into naming that level, apparently. Maybe we never thought we would have one. So a massive thanks to Jason Nunn for stepping up to that level. That's awesome. So whether it's at the Ultimate IVMV Podcast supporter level or at the $1 a month Tony Campana level, we appreciate the support. And if it wasn't for the support through our Patreon campaign, we wouldn't have stepped things up with our second episode each week when the season starts, and then we also wouldn't be doing the daily recap podcast. So we would like to thank our Hall of Fame level contributors: Jeremy, Dave, Dallas, Charles, Jane, Cass, Tony, Shane, Michael, John, Brian, Richard, Matt, Craig, and our associate producers, Matt, Anthony, Joshua, Ryan, and Jason. We actually drove through Josh's hometown, Colorado Springs. Unfortunately, it was 3 a.m., so we weren't going to go knocking on his door. So if you would like to jump on the Patreon campaign, you can go to patreon.com/IVMB. That's patreon.com/IVMB. And also, we don't mention it all the time, but we do have T-shirts available, and you can check those out at ivmb.com/store. So opening night is just 2 weeks away, 2 weeks from tonight. After sitting out in Arizona and watching 6 games in 5 days, I am ready for this season to start. After watching Chris Bryant destroy baseballs and Jorge Soler attempt to punch a baseball through a fence 340 feet away, I'm so ready. And I think we're all feeling really excited. I think anybody listening to this is too. So I just can't wait for this season. So we will be back next Sunday evening, and if you want to watch it live, we'll broadcast at 8:30 p.m. Central. Thank you for listening, and until next week, go Cubs. That was a long one.
I think it's okay, though. I mean,
Yeah, I felt
you
like
guys
we
just spent a week in Arizona. I don't think it's bad that we went long.
Oh man, I guess given how much conversing Andy and I have done over the last week, that felt really quick.
Like, wow, it's a short conversation.
Well, actually, was it yesterday or was it the day before, Andy? You and I had decided that we had talked about every possible topic possible that we. And do you remember exactly what it was that decided we had covered them all?
Was it because we started talking about bear tits?
Bear?
I think it was because we were bear. I don't remember how.
I
we
have
got to
beer.
that
I
either.
have beer tits.
Oh, elk. We talked about elk. Remember? We said effing elk, and Let me start.
So, yeah, how many? I'm sorry. Go ahead with it.
No,
Finish
no,
that-
go ahead. That
finish
was
the
just
Elk Claw.
stupid. No,
I was just gonna say, like, so how many hours total, both ways, did you spend in the car together? That was
50.
26 plus 31.
oh jeez,
Yeah, 57.
there's a lot of hours in a car.
Yeah, really.
It's only like a 4.5 hour flight, something like that. maybe next time we go with all this Patreon support,
Yeah, maybe
we should stash some money. Because whatever that junky ass airline, they fly directly into that Mesa
Spirit.
Airport. Is it? No, it's
No.
oh shit, I can't think of it. Frontier or something. Like
Oh
that.
yeah, but you know, I would be down for flying. I mean, it's just expensive, and we can do it
It's
so much.
so expensive.
We can do it so much cheaper by driving, and then we have the car out there, and we
Yeah.
just can go and do what we want when we want.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, if we get to a point where like it's a little more comfortable and the money coming in, that would be nice to
Oh yeah, it'd be nice to fly out there.
do.
But the Airbnb ended up being a really positive experience. Like that place was
Let's see.
awesome.
Yeah, the
Wasn't the,
Airbnb was awesome.
Clarion and Mesa. No
Well,
sausage.
you know, we were
sausage
hardly-
biscuits,
we were hardly ever there. I mean,
well, that's good though.
Yeah, we didn't get as much use out of some of the amenities that I thought we would, but that ended up being okay.
yeah, we didn't go to the pool or the hot tub or anything like that.
Yeah, we thought we would at the hotel too, though. And you just never do because it's like by the time you get home, being outside all day, you just want to go to bed. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of what ended up happening
Yeah.
this time too.
Did you guys end up going to that bar where it's like the house with the backyard thing?
yeah, we went there a couple times.
I love that place. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to going again when it works out better with the wee ones.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, the Iowa meetup should be fun though. Tawny and the girls
Yeah.
are going to go.
okay.
So I bought 20 tickets. So I thought we would just take up what we're going to use, you know, if you guys are taking the families and stuff, and then we could, whatever we have left, we could just say, hey, whoever tells us first can have these free tickets, and then
I guess Liam would probably need a ticket now.
probably.
3. Yeah, we'll probably all go. So I think at this point.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to get this thing edited and posted. Did you guys hear an episode title? The only thing I wrote down was, it was something you said, Kurt. It's probably not even that good, but you said Chris Bryant offensively, duh.
Well, I was gonna say hot dogs on a George Foreman. What was your explanation of Duffy's? Hey, they're serving hot dogs on a George Foreman. Andy pointed one out too, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I forgot. Oh, how about Flash Override is determining my future?
Yeah. Crash override.
Oh, I thought you said Flash Override.
Crash override.
Let's have that one. I like that one.
Is that the
Yeah, me
actual-
too.
cool. Yeah, do it.
All right. Well, I'm gonna get going.
All right. Yeah, it's kind of nice to be done at 9.
I know it's really nice.
But
Okay, I will
Yeah,
talk to you guys later.
All right, we'll see you.
Peace. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.